the world of wine. You know, I promised I would not say since how many years we know each other, but I've always seen you very active and always building a bridge between Indonesia and all the wine regions in the world. So big thank you for that.
Thank you.
And thank you, obviously, to all of you for taking the time to be with us. So the idea today is that first we will start with a presentation of Champagne in general as a region. You know, what are the basic rules and things that you need to know. I'm sure that some of you, or maybe most of you, are already quite aware about all this, but it never hurts to have a little reminder. And after that, I will tell you more about Taittinger as a family, as a company, how we see Champagne in general, what's happening in the life of the company. And after that, I will open for you a bottle of the Brut Reserve so that we can see together what are the main features there before moving to question and answers, as Wilia was saying. It's of course, with this video format, quite different from what we are used to do. That has limits, as Wilia was saying. Questions cannot be asked instantly, but please feel free to ask anything. We will take the time to reply all of the questions at the end of the session. Right? Yeah. Let's get to it. Et c'est parti.
Okay.
Okay, so usually I'd like to start by, you know, repositioning a little bit Champagne region in the universe of wine in the world and Europe. You know that in Champagne, like in most of European countries, it's the Romans who first started to grow wine. You know that 2000 years ago, most of Europe was under Roman domination, Italian domination. And he said and know that they would always love to grow wine in the countries where they would go, particularly along the riversides, as they would always give wine to their soldiers before going to battle. You know, they were the most powerful army back then. They conquered many countries, so probably partially thanks to the wine consumption. After the fall of the Roman Empire, the wine production everywhere in Europe decreased a lot, as it's only a few monks that would here and there produce wines or spirits, mostly to generate some revenue for themselves. So before seeing a resume of wine producing at a larger scale, we have to wait until 9th, 10th century and the interest of our English friends to the French wines. So in Champagne region, still wines were produced until more or less the half of the 18th century. That's when the first sparkling wines of Champagne have been produced. And since then, there have been, of course, a constant evolution in the growing, in the split of varieties, and in the way the wine has been approached. Other quite interesting thing about Champagne region, which explains partially why there is such a strong link between Champagne wines and royalty, is that in Reims we have a very big cathedral, you know, the same architecture as the Notre Dame in Paris, you know, the one that burned terribly last year. And in that cathedral in Reims, 27 kings of France have been receiving the crowd. So of course, century after century, that was making a very strong statement that royalty is in Champagne. Sorry. So in Champagne, the wine, sparkling wines, as we know, were founded, as I was saying, around the mid-18th century. But we have to wait until the beginning of the 20th to have an appellation, like the other wine regions. And this appellation, like the other wine regions, will obviously give us some rules and some points that we have to follow if we want to be able to use the name Champagne. Alors, first thing that the appellation, the IOC, will give us is the area of production. So Champagne, as you can see on the screen, represents around 33,000 hectares of vines. And with that, the region will produce around 300 million bottles per year. Of course, that changed from a year to another, mainly in function of the quality of the harvest and the world demand for Champagne. All those areas of production are divided into 5 sub-regions, and these 5 sub-regions have a total of 319 villages. Don't worry, I will not tell you the name of all the 319 villages. What you might just want to know is that there are 3 different levels of quality. Basically, the very top level is what we call Grand Cru, Great Growth. I know it's like in Burgundy or Alsace. So that represents only 13% of the Champagne grapes. It's very small, and only for Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And if you go one level down, you have what we call the premier cru, first growth, with this time around 20% of the production. So if we see it from very big, 30,000 hectares of vines divided into 5 subregions that include 300 villages. All this will give us 3 qualities of grapes. The very best, the Grand Cru, like the bottle of Comte de Champagne that our friend Billy was holding a little bit earlier. Then one level under, the Premier Cru, and finally the regular level. We grow in Champagne mainly 3 grape varietals. I'm sure you're already very familiar with them. I will name Chardonnay at first, not because it's the most produced, as it's in fact the less produced, but because it's the most important for us at Taittinger. There is then the Pinot Noir, very well known in the world, the most produced grape varietal in Champagne region with almost 40% of the production, and then the Pinot Meunier. Here they are, these grapes. Alors, Chardonnay is obviously the only white grape in the region. Why is it the less produced grape varietals? Chardonnay has always been more sensitive than the other grape varietals. Now it's around 30% of the grape production, but in fact, if you go back in time to the end of the 19th or beginning of the 20th, there was even much less reason for that. Lots of people would prefer to stay away from Chardonnay to limit the risk of losing grapes because of whatever problems. So to keep it easy to remember, we will say that Chardonnay will bring elegance, finesse to the wine. So basically, it's not about having a very strong slap of flavor straight to your face, but on contrary, to have a very delicate, very subtle wine. At Taittinger, Chardonnay always dominates all of our wines. That's really what brings this so delicate and elegant touch that's so dear to our style. Second grape varietal, Pinot Noir, everybody knows about it. Funny thing, if in the world of red wine, Pinot Noir is always considered as a light body varietal, in Champagne, it is the most powerful out of the 3 grapes. So it's really the Pinot Noir that will bring the power and intensity to your wines. And finally, the Pinot Meunier, third grape, not as famous as the other ones, as there is no Pinot Meunier straight wines. It's obviously a cousin of the Pinot Noir, a little bit lighter in taste and color. And it's a quite important grape varietal in Champagne region with 33% of the production, 1/3 of the total grapes production. Particularities of the Pinot Meunier, it ages, it gets ready a little bit faster than the 2 other grape varietals. So people who like to do a shorter aging would tend to work a little bit more on Pinot Meunier. Or at the same time, if you are looking for, an oxidized, aged wine taste into your wine, you can have more Pinot Meunier, age it a little bit longer, and the phenomenon will go faster than with the other grape varietals. How to make champagne? Well, of course, it's not about being able after this to go buy some grapes at the supermarket and make champagne in the kitchen, but well, I think it's quite interesting to see the different steps of the making. You will see that one of the very interesting, again, feature of champagne and that process is that at many steps, we have possibility to push the quality level much further than the minimum required by the AOC. We don't have so many villages and things like that in the classification in Champagne. So, of course, you will have quite big quality gaps even within the same category of grapes, being regular, Premier Cru, or Grand Cru. So, of course, the efforts that every producer will make in the making will have a huge impact on the quality of the wine. So let's start in the vineyards. And first thing to know is that by law, the harvest in Champagne region is made by hand. Why is that? It's not because the vineyards are too stiff, like in Rhone Valley, for example. It's because we are producing white wines with red grapes. If you harvest by machine, you risk to smash the grapes when you pick them, which would bring a red color to the juice, and we cannot have that. So what we will do is that we will pick the grapes very carefully to make sure that whatever grapes and juice reach the wineries is in perfect condition. Big advantage of doing this way is that it also allows us to have a first quality selection directly in the vineyard. Why is that? Most of the people who do the harvest, they are very well trained. They come back every year, and it's quite easy for them to get rid of grapes that would be too small or that would look sick or anything that would make them unfit for the production of wine. So from the vineyards, we bring all the grapes to the winery, and when we do the pressing in Champagne, we are allowed to press twice. Basically, it works like olive oil. The first press will be the purest, very clear, very lean. And if you press a bit more, you will get more juice, but this time a little bit troubled, you know, and with sediments and a much higher acidity in the taste. After the pressing, thank you very much. After the pressing, we will do the alcoholic fermentation. So this one is the same as for any kind of wine. You know, basically the sugar that's naturally contained in the juice will be turned into alcohol under the effect of yeasts. And after that, we have the possibility of doing or not what we call a malolactic fermentation. Alors, malolactic, it sounds a little bit barbarian as a name, but in fact, the concept is quite simple. It's all about transforming aggressive acids into smooth acids. Malolactic, from malic acids to lactic acids. To illustrate that, basically think that the malic acids is what you will have in most kind of green fruits. So green papaya, green mango, green apple, you know, when you bite in there and you feel a high acidity in your cheeks, that's the malic acids. What we do and what many people do in Champagne in order to make the wines a little bit smoother is that we transform this acid into lactic acids, the ones you have in milk. So from the aggressivity of green fruits to the smoothness of milk. It's not mandatory in Champagne, so there are still people who don't do it. It has quite a big impact on the taste. So it's really something that we see spreading quite fast, and then maybe more and more producers are using it again to smoothen the acidity in the Champagne. Until that phase, all the crus are kept separated. What we call a cru is one specific grape from one specific area. So all of this is kept separated. And it's only after the fermentation that a chief cellar maker with his team will proceed to the blending. Of course, extremely important, as it's really the moment when the final taste of the wine will be designed. But of course, it takes a lot of talent, as the winemaker needs to anticipate not on what the taste will be after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, but after years. I mean, if we want to take again the example of the Comte de Champagne that Billy was holding, think that it is made 10 years before being consumed. So of course, it really takes a lot of skills, knowledge, and talent to be able to have that time component included into the recipe in order to reach the taste that you want. Of course, it's a little bit like for a painter, the more grapes, the more different crus you will have, as the more colors the painter will have, the more precise you can be in designing the style of your wine. And that's why very often we say that the more a producer is relying on outside sourcing, the less consistent is the taste, as they have probably a little bit less assets, less possibilities to be very precise in what they want to do. So after the blending, we will obviously wait a little bit. We will bottle the wine and we will put it in the cellars for the last phase. Sorry, the aging on lees. So basically, what we use, I don't know if you, is already the same bottle as the one that will go all the way through the table of the consumer. We add a little bit of sugar and we seal the bottles with a crown, like on bottles of beer. That's where the last fermentation will start, what we call the prise de mousse, the foam taking. So it's still yeast that are still working on the sugar, but this time instead of producing alcohol, it will produce carbon dioxide. So that's how the bubbles come into the wine. That takes around 2-3 weeks to be finished. And in fact, that's one also of the big particularity of Champagne compared to sparkling wines. You know, the fact that this fermentation is done in a bottle and not in a big tank, not only gives us bubbles that are much finer, much tinier, but also they will last much longer. You know, it's a funny trick to do if you want to have fun with friends and make a demonstration. You have a bottle of champagne and a bottle of, let's say, Prosecco or Cava side by side. Open at the same time, pour at the same time, and you know that on the sparkling wine, you have much more foam. It's very spectacular, but if you come back 5 minutes after, all the bubbles are gone. So really the fact of having that fermentation in a bottle and not in a tank is really what generates those amazing tiny bubbles in champagne that you don't find in most sparkling wines. Once that fermentation is finished, we'll start the process of aging on lees. We say on lees. Why? Because there's still all the sediments left after the fermentation in the bottle. And here again, of course, we have rules given by the appellation. So the aging for a non-vintage champagne cannot be less than 15 months. You know, non-vintage champagne can blend different years together, so the aging cannot be less than 15 months. It can be more, it cannot be less. Even if you did everything by the book, if it's less, you cannot call your wine a champagne. Of course, you can go much longer, but no less. For vintage champagne with all the grapes from the same year, the minimum aging is 3 years. So for example, if tomorrow you go to a wine shop and you see a Champagne Brut Vintage 2019, it's a scam. Impossible, it has to be 3 years minimum. Voilà, and then there's what we call the tête de cuvée, so the head of wineries, the prestige cuvées, where a minimum of 5 years is requested, but in fact, all of them go much beyond, so there's not a real deal here. At the end of the aging process, of course, first of all, we'll have to remove the sediments. So what we do for that is that first we will bring the bottles from horizontal position to vertical. That's the remuage, what you see here on the small picture on the slide. Alors, it was used to be done 100% by hand. You know that now in most wineries, it's been replaced by bottles, at least for the 75 centiliters formats. And to be honest, if there's really one thing that has zero impact on the taste of the wine, it's that to switch from manual remuage to mechanical remuage. This said, for example, us, we will still do it by hand for anything that's over liter 5, magnum size, or all the Comte de Champagne with the specific bottle shape. So anyways, once we have the bottles vertically like this, upside down, with all the sediments collected around the bottleneck, we put the bottle in a frozen solution so that we will have an ice cube here with all the sediments in it. We turn the bottle again, open it, and with the pressure, the ice cube with all the sediments is ejected. So that's what is left is a nice, pure and clean sparkling wine. Now, of course, when we do that, we lose a little bit of wine. So we have to top the bottles up before putting the cork. And what we will do to do that is to use a blend of what we call reserve wine, so still white wine from the previous years, and liquid sugar. And it's that quantity, that final quantity of sugar that we will use, which will define the final sweetness of the wine. Now, of course, so that people know what they drink, we have different categories. You know, in Champagne, by very far, the largest category is what we call Champagne Brut, B-R-U-T. So that's basically between 6 and 15 grams of sugar per liter. That's really the immense majority. But for people who like it drier, you can go to an extra brut or zero dosage. For people who like it sweeter, you can go to sec or demi-sec or doux. So there's quite a wide panel of options from zero added sugar to relatively sweet, so that everybody can find what is their favorite style. Also, of course, that will change the possibilities of food pairing. Just maybe a quick one. You know, when we talk about those grams of sugar per liter, the dosage, I'm not sure if everybody is familiar with that. Well, that's really the way we use to measure sweetness of all the kind of wines. Most champagnes are, let's say, around 10 grams per liter. To give you an idea or an element of comparison, sodas like Coca-Cola would be around 150 grams per liter. So you see that average champagne would be 15 times less sweet than a glass of soda. I say that in case you have friends or girlfriends reluctant in drinking champagne because it's too sweet. Well, please feel free to spread the message. Well, so that's it. We finally topped up our bottles, so we are ready to put the cork and ship the bottles away. So you see, it's a quite long process. At the quickest, you can release your bottles after a little bit less than 2 years, but obviously for most producers and for us, it goes much beyond. I think what is quite nice to see here is the way also, well, at every step you have possibilities of going into a higher level of quality. You know, from the vineyards, you can work with basic grapes or Premier Cru and Grand Cru. Then you can work mostly with first press or with second press. Then you can do the malolactic or not. Then you can do the minimum aging or not. So you see as many possibilities, opportunities for every producer to decide where they want to be in the quality scale. All right, that was a lot, right? Maybe not too much. I hope we haven't lost anyone. We will now move to the Taittinger family a little bit more in detail. I hope that most of you are already familiar, at least with the name. You know, Taittinger is one of the last eponymous champagne producer. 150 years ago, you know, most of the champagne producers were independently owned. Now, most of the big names that you see out there are part of corporations. So we are really one of the last ones fighting very hard for our independence. So you see here that the story starts in 1240, almost 800 years ago. It's not because that's when the company was founded, that was 500 years before the first champagne was produced, but it's because that's when the Chardonnay arrived in Champagne region. And I will never repeat it enough, Chardonnay for us at Taittinger is really the main grape. So what happened back then? France, like most of European countries, was divided into provinces. Every province had a local lord, and all the lords were reporting, of course, to the king. In Champagne region, the guy in charge was Thibaut IV, son of Thibaut III, father of Thibaut V. Well, you get how they do it. And Thibaut, besides his political functions that he, in fact, didn't like at all, was very famous in France for being an artist, a poet, a singer, and also a big womanizer, really a lover. The guy married 4 times, had 7 kids, so really into women. And what happened is that one day he was found more or less guilty of having an affair with the Queen of France. Now you will tell me what's the problem with that. The problem is the King of France. The king heard about that and wanted to kill Thibaut as a punishment for daring thinking about his wife. So what Thibaut did in order to avoid being killed by the king was to place himself under the protection of the Pope. And how would you do that? By fighting for God. Back then, at the 13th century, if you wanted to fight for God, you would join the crusade. So that's what Thibaut did, joined the crusade, fighting for God. He was under the protection of the Pope, and thanks to that, the king could not do anything. And it's on the way back from the crusade that Thibaut found in Cyprus the ancestor of the Chardonnay grape. Moral of the story, if Thibaut was not after the Queen of France, there would not be Chardonnay in France. So because of that, because Chardonnay is so important to us, and also because of this artistic / romantic aspect of Thibaut's personality, he became the hero of Taittinger, and he is the one who you see on our logo riding the horse. I'm not sure if it's towards the battlefield or the bedroom of the Queen, but it is Thibaut IV, Comte de Champagne. So we are at the 13th century. Chardonnay arrives in Champagne region. It's produced as still wine like everything else. And we have to wait a few centuries before seeing the rising of sparkling wine. So 1729 is when the first champagne was officially produced. And 5 years after came the company Fourneau et Forêt, led by a man whose name was Jacques Fourneau. That was the third winery to produce champagne. And that's the winery that will become Taittinger much later. But for Taittinger family, story started much later also in 1915. So 1915, we are still at the beginning of World War I. Pierre Taittinger is an officer, he's a lieutenant, I think, in the French army. And to defend the border, he's sent to Champagne region. Where was he sent? In that place that you see behind me, or that you see here on the slide. This is called the Château de la Marqueterie. Now you have to imagine, when 1915, Paris is already a very industrial street, buzzing with cars and everything. The war is raging, and all of a sudden, Mr. Taittinger arrives there, in the middle of nowhere. You're in a valley, surrounded by vineyards, forest, nature is just amazing, beautiful. That beautiful that, in fact, he promised himself, if ever I could make it through the war, he would move out of Paris, settle down in Champagne region, and spend the rest of his life there. So it took him a little while until 1932, but finally he could make it. He bought over the Château de la Marqueterie. He bought over the winery Fourneau et Forêt. There was no one left in the Fourneau family, so it was free to change the name to Taittinger. And he started the adventure of Champagne Taittinger. So official birth date of our company is 1932. This said, between 32 and 39, he didn't do much from the wine point of view, as he was much more on the enjoying side than on the making side. And to see changes happening in our way of winemaking, we have to wait until 1945. End of World War II, François Taittinger takes over the company and decides to change everything. Basically, the statement he made was, champagne is a drink of seduction, of party, of enjoyment. Think that back then, as I was saying a bit earlier, most people would work with Pinots, not Chardonnay, because Pinots were more resisting. And on top of that, many producers would use barrel fermentation and everything possible to make the wine bigger. So that was very good for food. But when it was about, drinking all night long and dancing, that was not working. So Mr. Taittinger decided to change that and create a wine that would be more lady-friendly, more party-friendly, wines of lightness that you could enjoy even in large quantity. And how did he do that? First of all, move from Pinot Noir to Chardonnay. The only problem is that there was no Chardonnay, or not enough back then. So he had no other choice to reach that than buying vineyards to plant the Chardonnay himself. And in fact, that, which back then was a problem, is today probably our biggest asset and our biggest blessing. Owning lots of vineyards today means not only being more picky on the supply that you need, but also really allows you to have a strong control on the quality. So that was very important. So first step, switch from majority of Pinot Noir to a majority of Chardonnay. Second step, he thought it's not because the wines are light that they should not have complexity. We still want to drink with professional wine people. We want to be in gastronomical restaurants. So he said, okay, we'll have the lightness and elegance thanks to the Chardonnay, but we'll have on the complexity. How do we do that? By really using grapes from all over the region. He was buying vineyards intensely, so he could get more access to grapes like that. And at the same time, he built up very strong partnerships with growers that would make it up for whatever we were not able to produce. So elegance and lightness, thanks to high proportion of Chardonnay. Complexity, thanks to grapes from all over the region. The new concept was almost finished. There was just one final touch missing, is how do we make those wines even easier to drink and easier to enjoy. And that's how he came up with his team with the idea of using a combo of three things. First, very high proportion of first press. That reduces the acidity in the taste, makes the wine easier to drink. Second, full malolactic fermentation. Same. Full on all the wines, you reduce the taste acidity, that makes the wine easier to drink. And finally, very long aging. And when you put all that together, lots of first press, full malolactic fermentation, very long aging, what you get are champagnes where the structural acidity, of course, is here. That's what will push and pull up all the flavors, but the taste acidity, the disturbing one, almost disappears. So that it's really very easy to drink. And that was it. The new style of Taittinger was born. Elegant and complex and smooth. And that was very new back then, in the late 40s, early 50s. So thanks to that concept, our champagnes met an amazing success, particularly in Europe, of course, because that's where the family was the strongest, but also in USA, for example, where Taittinger became quite quick one of the major brands. A few years later, with the same idea of champagne of lightness and elegance, François Taittinger came up with the idea of Comte de Champagne Blanc de Blanc. So basically, still working on Chardonnay, but this time only Chardonnay, and not any Chardonnay, but only the very best, the Grand Cru Chardonnay. Unfortunately for him, François Taittinger could not enjoy the success very long. In 1960, he died in a car crash, and it's his younger brother, Claude, who will take over and keep the management of the company for 45 years until 2005. During that time, Champagne was doing very well, but it was just a small fraction of the family businesses. The family was more famous for their hotel business. They had close to 1,000 properties all across Europe, including some of the nicest names in Paris. But there were also some quite nice side businesses, like the Baccarat Crystalware, for example, on the perfume, Annick Coutal, on other wineries like Bouvet-la-Dubé in Loire-Vallée. So quite a lot of businesses in a big luxury empire. So 2005, he retired. Problem is that it's a very large family. He was afraid that some of the family members would fight to split the business. We've seen that in so many big families. Bit of jealousy, why you have the champagne, why you have the hotel. So in order to avoid that, what he did is that he sold everything. And it's only one branch of the family who bought back only the champagne. So no more hotels, no more perfumes, no more anything. Only one branch of the family taking care of only the champagne. So here they are at the bottom right of the slide. You see on the right Pierre-Emmanuel Taittinger, who was our president until 31st December last year, who is now our probably most sparkling and elegant part-time ambassador, as he retired from his position of president. And now the new boss is Vitaly, that you see on the left. So first time in the story of the company, we have a lady president. We are all very much looking forward to see what it will give in the years to come. Of course, we would have wished something else than a corona crisis as a welcome gift for her, but she's doing well, and well, we are all in very good state of mind to approach the months to come. In the middle, some of you have met him already, Clovis Taittinger. So he's, of course, seconding his sister with all the burden of the presidency, but at the same time, he's in charge of exports with my direct boss, and he took over also marketing and communication. So you see a family that's really very much involved and very much committed in the company. So what does it do of us now? We are an international luxury brand. We produced last year around 6.5 million bottles. That's about 2% of the wines, with around 300 hectares that we own. So we have 1% of the vineyards with which we produce 2% of the wine. So easy to understand that we produce half of our grapes and source the other half. We are the number 6 champagne brand in terms of volume of production per brand. In fact, if we want to see it that way, we could say we are the number 1 in terms of independent producer, as all the other above us are part of international corporation or cooperatives. We do around 85% of our sales in export. What does it say? You know, it's just to say that unlike many, we don't only work on the French or European market. You know, France itself absorbs more than half of the champagne production every year. It's very huge. You know, there are hundreds of producers that you will never see outside of France, of Europe. But for Taittinger, since day one, it's been our DNA to spread the word, to be, spreading and sharing our champagne with the whole world. So that's really something that's very important to the family, and that we'll still do. And we welcome around 100,000 visitors every year, not this year, obviously, in our underground cellar. So here, I really encourage you, if ever you make it to France, it's probably easier for our friends in London, but please do us the honor, come and pay a visit to the winery. You'll see it's a beautiful tour. Outside the ground, where we'll explain you how we do the wine and where we'll drink it with you, or underground, where you can really dive into history and enjoy those cellars from the 4th century. Thanks to that very good balance that we offer between, you know, quality of the wine and image of the company, we've been able to build during the years lots of very strong partnerships. You have a few examples here on the screen. You see it's quite diverse, from traditional hospitality actors like the hotel chains, but also through sport organizations, cultural organizations, bit of everything really. And all these people deciding to work with us. Why? Because we have a wine of a very good quality, but also a very good image and a very champagne image that we are conveying. So little summary again of what really I would like you to remember about Taittinger. Again, family owned and managed. Maybe some will not understand why it's so important and why it makes so much sense when you talk about quality wine, that it's a family that owns it. Well, I would tell you that if you put your own name on a product, of course, you always want to make sure it's good. You have only one name. You cannot change it. You cannot bastardize it. So the commitment to your client is obviously a little bit higher. Other very important things, those vineyards that we have, I was saying close to 300 hectares. You see here 288 hectares of vineyards. And again, not only it's a very good asset to control the quality of what we produce, but it also helps us a lot to be a bit pickier every year when it's about buying grapes. You know, some people have no other choice than buying anything they're offered because they have to maintain a production level. We are the exact opposite of that. First, we see what good grapes we have, and then we transform it into champagne. And voilà, owning half of our production vineyards is a very great asset for that. To summarize, I would say that Taittinger nowadays is a family producing pleasure champagnes around 3 points. If you want to explain your friends, your clients, or whoever, what are Taittinger champagnes, those three words that you can keep in mind. Elegance thanks to lots of Chardonnay. complexity thanks to grapes from everywhere, and smoothness. Smoothness thanks to long aging, first press, and malolactic. Elegant, complex, and smooth. Well, that's probably all I will tell you about the company right now. I see we are slightly behind schedule, not much, so it's still good. We will now open a bottle of Brut Reserve. I know that not all of you will have the chance to have a bottle with you, but regardless, you know, sorry about that for the ones who don't. Basically, you know, Taittinger Brut Reserve, it's really the, I cannot see so well. Well, really the most important champagne for us. Maybe not the most famous. The most famous would be Comte de Champagne, obviously, but the most important, as for 95% of the people in the world, that will be the first contact with our champagne. So, of course, here, not only we will not take any risk with the quality, but also we will really communicate on what is our style and what people can expect if ever they move up in the range. Wow, so what? Yes.
We also here in Bali in the classroom we will also open this one.
The Nocturne, beautiful. Perfect. So I will say something about it too.
All right.
The Brut Reserve here is well probably the best illustration of this trio: elegance, complexity, and smoothness. We have here 40% of Chardonnay, but that's those Chardonnays always include some Grand Cru and Premier Cru grapes. We have here 35% of Pinot Noir to give a bit more of extra power, 25% of Pinot Meunier to wrap it up with a nice fruitiness and acidity. We have here over 90% first press, aging on lees between 3.5 and 4 years. Maybe you remember that. Oh, nice. Okay. Maybe you remember that minimum aging for non-vintage is 15 months. So here we are close to 3 times the minimum. What to expect here? Obviously, nice elegance and subtlety that the Chardonnay will bring. Again, don't expect something too strong. Don't expect something that will take all the space in your mouth. It's not that. Here is about elegance and subtlety. But at the same time, because there are so many kind of grapes, around 35 different crus here in this bottle, you will notice already on the nose, and even better on the palate after, a really nice diversity of flavors. And not only it's very diverse, but you will see that when you put it in your mouth, it's perfectly balanced. So we have a champagne that's light and delicate, that's flattering because of all the flavors, smooth because nothing is really dominating. And you will see that one of the really remarkable feature here is the length of finish. I mean, again, we are on a Brut, not vintage champagne. This is, I hate to use the word, but it's our entry level. See already when you have the chance to taste it, how long those flavors will stay in your mouth, and also how with every breath you will get new flavors bouncing around. So this is our entry level, but at the same time, again, it's our most important champagne, very well acclaimed in the world. It's a champagne that many restaurateurs and hotels like to work with for the reason that it's very easy to pair. You know, there are other great champagnes out there, but more typicized. That means you lose some of the people because it's too strong, because it's too oxidized, because it's too aged. Here at Taittinger, we really want to have a champagne that will work as well with someone who's drinking for the first time of his life. You know, it's fresh, it's not over acidic, it's not over alcoholic, it's very well balanced, it's easy to drink. But we will also please the wine specialist. I mean, again, if you look about the diversity of flavors, the richness, the complexity, and the length, this is really talking to high professionals. So we have a champagne that's at this crossroad, you know, an amazing champagne of party and entertainment for good moment of freshness without any headache, and at the same time, a real gastronomical and high-profile champagne that will please even the most demanding wine people, thanks to its balance, thanks to all the features it has. The Nocturne that William and friends are having in the shop in Bali is basically the same blend, but with twice the dosage. In the Brut Reserve, we have around 9 grams per liter. 9 grams, we think it's a very good balance between round enough to be easy to drink and dry enough to really have the perception of the wine. Nocturne is twice that dosage. It's around 18 grams. So of course you lose a little bit of flavors, and what we do to compensate that is that We add some more crus in the blend, around 40 different crus here, and a couple of months to the aging. What we didn't want to do was to produce a sweet champagne that would end up in cocktails. Other people do that. We don't want to do that. What we wanted to do was a high gastronomy, high quality champagne with different food pairing possibilities. That extra sugar will work very well with spicy dishes, for example, but also with fat dishes. Nocturne is always a champagne of choice for things like, confits or foie gras or things like that. And also because the extra sugar makes it so easy to drink, that's why we made it kind of our favorite night champagne, even without food. There's zero disturbance of acidity in the mouth or in the body. So cheers, everyone. To the ones who can drink, to the other ones, I hope you can get a bottle real soon. I'm not sure if the liquor shops are already open in London, but hopefully you will be able to put a wine on my words very soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Well, so I see we have a bit of time left to reply the questions. I will stop sharing this.
So,
of course, it's not as entertaining as a real session. I hope you guys still could enjoy a bit and then get a few things with you, learn a few things. But any question, we'll be happy to reply.
All right. I mean, it was excellent. For those who doesn't have any glass with you, I'm very sorry, but if you're in Bali and you still have time, we still have a bottle here, so maybe you can just jump in here if you have time after the session. Couple of questions is already raised in the chat. Nikolai, you can see also in the chat.
Yeah, I'm going through it now.
Yes.
So first of all, thanks and hi to the friends from South Africa, from Switzerland. Thanks for joining us from London, absolutely. From Vietnam, that's me, yeah. Alors, question. With the current double crisis in Champagne going forward, will récoltants manipulants be permitted to purchase more than 5% grapes this year? Has been suggested, while many IMs actually ever need take up this option. Thank you. Alors, things hasn't, for what I've understood, things hasn't been written in stone yet. So all this is being reshuffled at the moment. What do we know? We know that estimations so far are of about a drop of 1/3 of the champagne demand in the world this year. That means basically around 100 million bottles. How do we address that? First of all, there will be less grapes harvested. Every year the CIVC gives us, not harvested, but produced in Champagne for this year. So every year, the CIVC, the Comité Interprofessionnel des Vins de Champagne, so our Chamber of Commerce, tells us what we can harvest, what we can produce as champagne, and what we can keep as reserve wine. So this year, there will be a lot of reserve wine. Now, what will happen, most récoltants manipulants, they will in fact not need to go for extra sourcing in the way that it's in the rotation of every producer, to have a few years in advance. The wine, for example, here at Taittinger, the grapes that we will harvest here will not hit the markets before another 4 years. So there's a lot of calculations that are being made right now. What is sure is that we can count on our CIVC to really try to regulate as much as possible to avoid oversupply, drop of prices, and producers left without anything to produce or to sell. Now, what would be the exact shape of it, to be honest, I'm not sure yet. Well, I hope that it replied well the question. Next one, is there other grape varieties that allow for making champagne outside 3 grape main varieties? Yes, absolutely. And you put the names after. Well, so there are, I think it's 6, so 3 more grape varietals that are allowed to grow in Champagne, which were historically produced in some very specific area. And when the appellation has been made and the rules have been made, an exception has been made for these grapes. I think it represents 0.0% of the production. There's probably only 2 or 3 guys who work with it, and I would be totally unable to give you their names. But it's quite interesting, actually. You can find all the info on Wikipedia. I did it not so long ago. Too long to remember exactly the content, but recently enough to know that it's all there. So yeah, when we say, if the question is there really only 3 grape varietals in Champagne? The answer is no. There's not only 3 grape varietals, but 99.999% of what you will drink would be made with these 3 grape varietals. This said, and maybe well, that would be a good moment to say it, you know, nothing is written in marble. Again, you know that with the climate changing and everything that's happening, lots of things are evolving. So what will be the future of Champagne and the appellation? Will there be other grape varietals? This is all with a question mark. Okay, I know there's been an increased demand in Blanc de Blanc Champagne recently, if I'm correct. Can you say something about that? Alors, yes and no. The thing is that there's still a quite wide misunderstanding about what Blanc de Blanc is. And actually, I see it in quite a few events, you know, or things like that, when people are not clear with what the Blanc is. So I think the name is trendy, it's very catchy. The thing is that there's not many entry levels Blanc de Blanc, as you know, so we don't know how much of a trend it will stay. You don't drink Blanc de Blanc because the name is trendy the same way you drink a Prosecco or a Doux because it's trendy. You know, we are talking about, for people who are after quality, we're talking about different kind of budgets. I know that people like Ruinart, for example, not to name them, have been coming up with more affordable alternative, non-vintage Blanc de Blanc and so on, which contributed to the fame of the category. We are obviously very much into it, as our Comte de Champagne is still considered as probably the most consistent Blanc de Blanc, and we are exploring options to doing more things on this side. Well, there's nothing confirmed yet, and it will take very long. But yeah, Blanc de Blanc, if you want, the advantage is that it allows probably many people to see a clearer difference between champagne and sparkling wine. So in that way, that's really a good thing for us, where it reinforces the fact that champagnes are not like Cava, Prosecco, or other ones. Now, I think there's still a very big educational work to do on many consumers and explaining what Blanc de Blanc is.
All right.
All right. Do you still produce Prelude? Absolutely. Prelude is still, you know, one of our chouchou, one of our favorites. It's this mouth-to-ear champagne that goes from sommelier and sommelier and one professional of one professional. We keep producing it at the same level of production, so around less than 100,000 bottles a year. And yes, it's a blend of half Chardonnay, half Pinot Noir, only Grand Cru grapes, only first press, and it's a non-vintage Grand Cru champagne, which is why it's so unique. You know, most people wouldn't expect a non-vintage champagne to be at that level of quality. And most of the time when you get people into blind tasting or things like that, they're just amazed. It's probably, you know, in fact, I'm told very often by clients that it's one of the best value for money in the champagne universe. You know, it's not cheap at all, but man, what you get for that price is really, you know, we're not shy at all in putting it side by side to the greatest names in contest and competitions. It's an amazing champagne.
All right.
Thank you for the good comments on the presentation. Thank you for not writing any bad comments. Appreciate that.
Another question from Billy.
Hello. Yeah, Billy, when can we expect Domaine Carneros to be available for export? I know, my friend, I know. The thing is that it's constantly out of stock. Domaine Carneros, for the ones who don't know, is a winery that we have in northern Napa Valley. Actually, Carneros is became the name of the region. And there we produce sparkling wines, but only super high level, only vintage, only first place. So with all the quality criteria of Taittinger. The thing is that 95% is consumed in US domestic markets, and we can never satisfy the demand. So it's very hard for us to export outside of the US. But Billy, your request has been duly noted since the 3 years already. And one day we'll get it. I promise.
Okay, that's interesting. The thing is also that if only that the wine can be shifted, we hope that the regulation of Indonesia will be soon change. So it's open door for us. Otherwise, it will be
Yeah,
ridiculous.
but you know, I think that's why Billy is asking for this one. It's produced in the US, so it's not a European product. So
Oh,
that
maybe
that
that's
could,
the reason.
yeah, that could probably go through.
True, true.
Uh,
I mean,
yeah.
for those who are not familiar with Indonesia condition right now, so it's actually that's the condition about the trading. So the Indonesian government is banning most of the European product, including wines. So meaning that it's we the importer like Pak Billy was not be able to import the wine to Indonesia because of that regulation. So whatever bottle that we are drinking is basically whatever the last stock. I think this is a private collection from Gary. That's why we still have the bottle today to drink. All right. Any other question from anybody? Okay. Nico, if you can a little
Yes.
bit, when you do the explanation about the making of the champagne, how is the non-vintage or champagne made? I mean, I know that you didn't reserve the wine, but how is actually you blend it between couple of the vintages or what?
Alors, for us, you know, one funny thing. Let me first re-explain the difference between a vintage champagne and a non-vintage champagne.
Yeah.
A non-vintage champagne is changing the recipe every year in order to get the same taste.
Mm.
A vintage champagne is the opposite, is keeping the recipe to change the taste. So non-vintage is change the recipe to keep the taste. Vintage, keep the recipe to change the taste.
Yeah.
This to say that there is no fixed frame. So average for us, a boat reserve would be 70% from the main year, 20% 1 year older, and 10% another year older. Okay, so 3 different years, 70 from year 1, 20, and 10. But he said there is no fixed rule. And we can change that anytime, any year, if it's what we need to do to have a consistent taste and quality in the boat reserve. That's really the main thing.
All right, get it. Gary want to ask you something? No?
Yes, Gary.
Gary?
And I just continue about now. I just want, and for the vintage, what is it? Can you explain a little bit about the vintage champagne?
So yeah, basically vintage will be at least 95% grapes from the same year. And what we want to do with a vintage would be to highlight, of course, the particularity of a year. So vintage champagnes normally are not produced every year. Will be only when there's a special interest in doing it. And of course, you are limited in the grapes you can use and also in the making. Maybe you remember that the minimum aging for vintage champagne is 3 years, so a bit longer than non-vintage champagnes. Another thing, for vintage champagne, you will keep exactly the same recipe from a vintage to another, so that the difference of taste will illustrate what happened. You know, if you take, for example, if you compare, let's say, 2005 and 2007, what was the point of doing vintage champagnes that year? This year, 2005 was to show what extra maturation, extra ripening from intense heat would give in terms of taste, whereas 07 will be the contrary, you know, and will show you, as you can see on the Comte de Champagne one now, how a more, let's say, measured and temperate weather can give a different leanness, different linearity, different tension. So that's really the advantage of vintage champagnes, is to see what is the impact of conditions, mainly weather, but conditions in general to a specific year.
All right. So any other, except of everybody saying thank you for the presentation and etc.
Yeah, I will pass the regards to Clovis. Actually, I have a phone call with him just after this, so the greetings will be passed. Taittinger scarf, she designed. Yeah. Yeah, they're nice. And unfortunately, now she might not have time to do that anymore. So you should really cherish that collector item.
Yeah, that's true. It's really a personal collection only. Another more question from Togu. Is there any vintage for that Comte de Champagne didn't produce?
Oh, many. You know, the first vintage of Comte de Champagne was 1952. We will release 2008. So that's 56 years, and in 56 years, we produced 35 vintages only. So that's 21 years that have been skipped. And you see, if we talk about more recent years, so now 08 is about to come, there is no 9 and no 10. So that will jump directly to 2011. The same way, there was no 2001 and no 2003. You know, really, a wine like the Comte de Champagne, it's either we can produce it at the top or we don't do it. As simple as that. You know, we are a family company. For us, there's much more added value in protecting the image of the wine than just bottling it because we have to sell it, because we have to pay dividends to whoever investors. You know, if there's any doubt, like we could have done a bit of Comte de Champagne Blanc de Blanc 2009. I mean, quality of grapes was there. But we prefer to do an excellent Brut vintage and to use the rest of the grapes in the Brut non-reserve so that everything was amazing and we didn't add a Comte de Champagne 2009. We prefer that as opposed to have a Comte de Champagne 2009 and then be struggling with all the cuvées to maintain the quality level. If we have to sacrifice Comte de Champagne, we do it. If we are not sure Comte de Champagne will be good enough, we don't do it.
Mm-hmm. And following that, there's another question. What is the best vintage for the CDC ever? From Henry.
It's a very hard question. They're all different and beautiful. If you ask me, it's a story of personal taste. If you ask me right now, I would tell you 2002. You know, 2007. Sorry, I know everybody is 2002 was so amazing. I'm a huge fan of the 2007. I found right now it's a beautiful balance of everything. It really talks to me. But people who are more into aged champagne will prefer older vintages. People who are into more extravagant will prefer warmer year, like 2005, as we just mentioned. Or people who like more lean or more old on would prefer 2002. So it's really, there's no best vintage of Comte de Champagne. And if you have to take something home, it's like, if Comte de Champagne is bottled, it is an amazing vintage. Wow. Because, you know, when you ask me that, Henry, it's almost like asking me which is the worst vintage of Comte de Champagne. And there's not such a thing.
That's true. Is Taittinger apply also the, are you guys organic viticulture, you know? Are you doing also organic?
Yeah, we call what we do the agriculture raisonnée.
Okay.
And let me try, because actually I had something, where is it? Well, I can't find it here, but yeah, we are one of the pilot company. So together with the CIVC to try lots of new techniques. Basically, right now, what we do is we look a lot of what people are doing in Germany in terms of reducing the products and stuff. So we are not after the organic or the bio classification, but we do everything we can.
All right. Because nowadays, like everybody talking about the organic, you know, biodynamic, natural, those kind of things, right? So,
yeah, but you know, our general winemaker, general manager and winemaker, Damien Le Sueur, he has a very good way to reply to that. When people are asking him, you know, why do you still use product? Why you're not bio? He said, you know, it's very easy, my friend. When your kids are sick, you give them medicine or you look at them suffer. The vine is the same. You know, it's not. We don't go every day and put medicine everywhere, but when there is something to address, it has to be addressed. So that's where we are, and that's what we do.
All right, noted then. That's really interesting to, you know, to describe between those two. Okay. Henry keeps. Are you practicing organic already? Togo, I already asked that. Cannot wait to share the bottle of champagne, Taittinger with Vivini and Malcolm soon. So, I mean, it seems like invitation. So hopefully after everything is open, we can get together and having a party. As the principle of the Taittinger itself is something to be for fun and celebrate and, you know, to share with your friends and your colleagues. Any other question, guys? Ada lagi yang mau bertanya? Silahkan. All right. If it is not, Nicolas, from your side, any closing station from your side?
Thank you very much again to everyone. Terima kasih, and voilà, we are now every day is better than the previous one. You know, we decided at the company we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about it anymore. Not because we deny it, but because the whole thing is the opposite of the champagne spirit. So now, voilà, it's about love, about pleasure, getting out, sharing the bubble, sharing the love, and voilà, I hope you will all have a very good unlocking down period and very good months to come.
Before closing, I would like also to say thank you, especially for the for everybody, like for our importer Jadi, for Indonesia importer, Mega Beverindo also for the distributor in Jakarta, Best Wine in Bali, for Jaba in Surabaya, and also my Lucky Vino in Bandung. Thank you so much for allow us to have the session, especially for Nico. For all already participate, thank you so much from all over the place, basically. Thank you so much for joining us. We will continue the next session, which is next Thursday. It will be very interesting. Marcos, are you still here? Marcos? So next week, we're talking about something that is not familiar for us, but something very interesting. We usually only seeing that in the wine book, basically. Marcos, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so Marcus will lead us next week, and we are talking about Switzerland. So from the Champagne, we are going to Switzerland, and we were talking about the Switzerland wine region. So looking forward to your session, Marcus, next week. So
thank you.
Oh yeah, so invitation will be out soon. So thank you so much. The last thing to do is the photo session. For those who still having the video off, can you put the video on so we can have a photo session virtual? This is something that happening only on the COVID situation that we're taking a picture like this. Okay, Septi, your picture, your face, Rael. All right, Cecilia, udah mandi belum? Michelle, belum. Okay, 1, 2, 3, everybody cheers. Okay, I'll go to the next window. 1, 2, 3. All right, I still have many people not having the face yet, Maria.
Hey, Andre, that's your biggest smile?
All right. Thank you so much once again for Nico. Stay safe.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank
Thanks
you so
a
much
lot.
for the opportunity. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
I unmute also, you can talk. Okay.
Thank you, Nico.
Bill, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye guys, thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye, Nicolas.
Thank you, Bill.
Bye.
Ayo, sama-sama. Thank you.
Oh, Billy, thank you
Lupa
ya.
HP-nya.
Enjoy champagne. Bye guys, thanks.
Bye, thank you.
Bye, thanks.